Okay, welcome back. So today I'll be talking about the muscles of the head and neck. Alright, so I'm going to start off with the frontal belly of the occipitofrontalis muscle, which is basically along the forehead itself. Then we would have onto the posterior aspect, right there, the bottom portion. This is a posterior aspect. So this is called the occipital belly of the occipitofrontalis muscle, and in between we have a whitish continuation with the front portion right there. So this is called the epicranial aponeurosis. So basically it's connecting the two muscles, or the two bellies of muscles. Alright, so we have a muscle that's surrounding the eyes. Okay, so this is called the orbicularis oculi muscle. Then we have muscle that's going downward, and this is called the depressor. It's depressing the supercilii muscle. So it is the depressor supercilii muscle. More medial to it, we have a second or another muscle. It's called the procerus muscle. Then we have the nasalis muscle, and it's just close to the nose. That's why we would refer to the nasalis muscle right there, number 7. It's the nasalis muscle. Then we have the muscles that's surrounding the mouth itself. So this is called the orbicularis oris muscle. Besides this, we have number 9 right there. So we would call it the levator labii superior nasi muscle. And the muscle just next to it, so kind of a triangle shape as well, is called the levator labii superior muscle. More lateral, we find 2 more muscles, and they're called the zygomatic minor muscle, and this is the zygomatic major muscle. Now this gland is called the parotid gland. Okay, so we have another muscle that's kind of attached to the orbicularis oris and onto the masseter muscle, and this muscle is called the rhizoris muscle. So that's whenever we smile and there's kind of a depression there or a smirk, that's what the muscle main function will be. Okay, so we have the masseter muscle, which is the main muscle of mastication. And along with that, this is the auricle, or the ear. We have 3 different muscles, and this muscle is called the auricularis superior muscle, auricularis anterior muscle, and auricularis posterior muscle. So it's linked close to the ears itself, and they're attached to the base of the ear itself. So it's called auricularis superior muscle, auricularis anterior. Remember, this is the anterior, and auricularis posterior right there. Okay, then we have major muscle that we know it. It's called the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So it's being attached. The name applies from the attachment from the sternum itself and being inserted into the mastoid process. So that's why we would refer to it as the sternocleidomastoid muscle. All right. So let's knock out more muscles. So we'll get this out of the way. This is the pectoralis major. This is the deltoid muscle. And let's go a little bit more medial. So, but first let's finish this up. We have, this one is the depressor anguli oris muscle. And this muscle is called the depressor labii inferior muscle. And we would have number 16, which is right there at the tip of the shin itself, and this is called the mentalis muscle. Then if we would go a little bit here, let's talk about different regions. So initially, as we know, that this is the sternum. Okay, that's the upper portion of the sternum itself, which is the manubrium. This is the clavicle, and we would have a gland over here. This gland is called the thyroid gland. It's a butter-shaped gland. So we would have the right lobe, and we would have the isthmus connecting between the right and imagination, that we would have the left lobe that's hiding underneath these muscles. Then we have a bone here. It's called the hyoid bone, and underneath we have a different bone, and this is called the thyroid cartilage actually. So it is a cartilage, it's not a bone. So it's a little bit softer than bones. Okay, so let's go along and talk about more muscles. So anything that's kind of attached, it will apply to the region or to the name of the origin of the muscle attachment itself. So for instance, we have this muscle. So this muscle is called the sternohyoid muscle. So it's coming out from the sternum into the hyoid bone. So I'm going to refer to it as the sternohyoid bone. More lateral to it, which is number 32, this is called the superior belly of omohyoid muscle. So again, this is the hyoid muscle and this is the superior belly. And if we have a superior, we must have an inferior belly. So this is the inferior belly, number 33 right there. So it's the inferior belly of omohyoid muscle. Okay, so let's take a look at this muscle right there. And this is called the anterior belly of digastric muscle. So it is the anterior belly of digastric muscle, and we would have a posterior belly of digastric muscle. On top of that, we have the stylopharyngeus muscle. Then we would have mylohyoid muscle. Okay. All right. Let me go a little bit more towards the other sides. So we would have the genio or the geniohyoid muscle, and number 30 will be the hyoglossus muscle right there. All right, so not only that, well, we have more muscles. There's more coming up. So for this muscle, it's the main origin is coming up from the sternum, and it's being inserted next to the thyroid. So we call it the sternothyroid muscle. Sternothyroid muscle. And another muscle that's coming out from the thyroid region into the hyoid bone. So we would call this muscle the thyrohyoid muscle. Okay, so this is the thyrohyoid muscle. All right. All right, so if you look, let's bring this back here. Okay, so let's go up and actually twist this around. Okay, so this is where the temporal lobe or the temporal bone is located, and there is a huge muscle right there. It's called the temporalis muscle. Okay. Then for this muscle, it's within the buccal region or the cheek muscle. So we'll just call it the buccinator muscle. Okay, now we have the upper and the lower muscles. So the lower one is called the medial pterygoid muscle, and that would help our jaw to be moving right and left. So we have a medial pterygoid, and if we have a medial, we must have a lateral. So this is the lateral pterygoid muscle. Please keep in mind pterygoid starts with a P, while the P is silent. All right, so if I go further down here into more muscles, I find that we have number 37, that's called the scalenus anterior muscle. So again, we'd have three different scalene muscles. So we have an anterior, and another one that's medius, and we have a posterior scalene muscle. So initially it will be the scalene anterior muscle, scalene medius muscle, and we would have the scalene posterior or the posterior scalene muscle. Okay, more muscles. So we did speak about the pectoralis major. If we do have a pectoralis major, underneath we should have a pectoralis minor, which is right there, number 48. Alright, so we have number 50. This is called the serratus anterior, and we would have some muscle insertion between the different ribs. So one will be external, one will be in the middle, and a third will be the inner portion. So for this one, number 51, it will be the external intercostal muscles, and number 52 will be the intercostalis internal muscle, or the internal intercostal muscle. So both are correct, just different authors. Alright, so hopefully that we've covered the majority of muscles, but we have just a few more to go. So for number 49, this is on top of the scapula. This is a posterior view, or posterior portion, and it's within the superior portion of the scapula itself. So we would call it the supraspinous muscle itself, because we have the supra and we have the infraspinous. So this is from the posterior view, so we would call it the supraspinous muscle. And number 40, which is from the posterior aspect, so this is the levator scapulae muscle. And if I will just look at the posterior view from here, so we would have number 45. This is the trapezius muscle. Number 45 is the trapezius muscle. And if we would go into the upper portion right there, so this is the semispinalis capitis muscle. Underneath we have the rhomboid minor, and whenever we have a minor we must have a major. So this is the rhomboid major muscle. Now number 41, which is right there, so this is called the splenius capitis muscle. And I believe last but not least, I think we already spoke about the semispinalis capitis muscle, and hopefully this video would be kind of a great benefit for you. So please just notice that the relationship between the different blood vessels. This is the common carotid artery, give us a branch inside, so it's called the internal carotid artery, and it was split into the outside carotid arteries. So this is the artery that's supplying the thyroid gland from the upper portion, is called the superior thyroid artery, and if there's a branch supplying the thyroid gland from the inferior portion, will be the inferior thyroid artery. Again, that's the subclavian artery, and again keep in mind this is the right common carotid artery. And we could look over here into the branches that's coming off. So this is considered to be the lingual artery, reaching out to the link, which is the tongue itself. And this is the maxillary artery, and again we'll have a mandibular branch. And let's go around here. This is the posterior auricular branch, and we should have a temporal, or the superficial temporal branch right there.